Hello and welcome to another edition of Sri's Sunday New York Times Read Along. My name is Neil Parekh. I am the executive producer and guest host of our show. Our guest today is Johnette Howard. She collaborated with Billie Jean King on her autobiography, All In. She's she was formerly with ESPN, Newsday, Sports Illustrated, The Washington Post, National Sports Daily, and the Detroit Free Press. She also wrote a book called The Rivals about Chris Evert and Martina Navratilova. Our host, of course, is Sri Srinivasan, the Marshall Loeb Professor at the Stony Brook School of Journalism and co-founder of Digimentors, a digital and virtual events consultancy. I am the Vice President of Events and Communications at Digimentors, and it's great to have you with us today. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We're also live on two of Johnette's channels, on her Facebook page and Twitter. So for all of you watching, thank you for joining us. The New York Times Read Along airs live on Sundays every week at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Let us know where you're watching from. Tag a friend, retweet, like, comment, share. Bring other people into the experience. We'd love to have them. We want to welcome some of the folks watching so far. Laura Silverman is watching from Philadelphia. Laura, thank you for joining us. And I will say thank you for the books, particularly the one on Yogi Berra. Really appreciate it. Laura was a former guest on the show about 2 years ago. I was at her home in Philadelphia. And she already tagged a friend of hers to come watch. So Laura, great job. We have Doug Levy joining us early from the West Coast, but this time from Hollywood. Usually he's up in the Bay Area. Doug, thank you so much. Always appreciate seeing you. Apollo is joining us from sunny Center City, Philadelphia Sprout Store. I guess. Hope all are well. Maybe that's a typo. One of our producers, Carla Baranakis, is joining us from Weehawken, New Jersey. And she's saying hello to all of the AWSM members. I believe that's Association of Women in Sports Media. Hopefully I got that right, who are tuning in this morning. And thank you for retweeting our post, AWSM. Michael Omal is watching from Kenya. We do have an international audience, so thank you for that. Rachel Cooper joining from New York City. Jess Ash from Portland, Maine. Jess, a former United Way colleague, I'm so thrilled that you were able to join us. Jess tweeted about All In, the autobiography of Billie Jean King that Johnette worked on. And she was excited when she saw that we were doing the show. So Jess, thank you so much. Linda Lawrence joining us from Long Island. Patricia Freudenberg as well joining us from New York. So thank you, Patricia. And now what I'd like to do is to bring in our co-host, our host for the show, Sri Srinivasan. Sri, sorry for the demotion. You're not the co-host, of course. You are the host. I am always proud to be the guest host on the show. I guess I got a little ahead of myself, a little too excited. But what a great show we have planned today, huh?
I am so excited to meet Johnette and talk to her about this incredibly important book that she's worked on, also her incredibly brilliant career that she's had in journalism. And we want to take your questions about anything to do with sports, with tennis, and more. So please put in your questions. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us how your Sunday is going. We've built this community over 5.5 years. It's almost going to be 6 years later in a couple of months. So we're going to be celebrating this. If you're new to the New York Times Read Along, we do this every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can watch live or later on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. And we really love the fact that we have so many people watching around the world. This is not just a tribute to the print edition of the New York Times. This is also about supporting journalism and facts and information and not misinformation or disinformation. So we encourage you, if you are able to subscribe to a newspaper wherever you are in the world, please do so, especially local journalism, because we need that more than ever. If you're watching this We're part of Digimentors, and what we do is we build shows like this for other folks. We do conferences and we do talk shows and we do consulting. And if you know anyone who would like a show like this or help with virtual events, hybrid events, please contact us. And we'd like to talk to you, Sri@digimentors.group or Neil@digimentors.group. And we're able to do this because of our fantastic sponsor. We'd like to thank the folks at Muckrack for helping support this show. You know them if you're in PR or in journalism, you know all about muckrack.com. And if you'd like to be a sponsor, get in touch with us as well. And we couldn't do this without our awesome team that makes this possible. You'll see the annotations that they do, the help in getting the broadcast out there, making it relevant to you. You'll see our team in the different channels posting links, and that makes it so much better. Paula Kiger is with us at Big Green Pen, Carla Baranakis at Kabara, Julia Weeks at Julia L. Weeks, and Steve Taylor at Steve DeReeve. Neil is our executive producer. Please follow all of them. He's at Neil Parekh. And we have so much to get through today. I'm going to show you just now, just very quickly, what the newspaper looks like, and then we're going to bring Johnette in to talk with us. So what I'm going to do is turn off this camera here so that you can take a look at the newspaper and we can get a sense of what's going on. So here is the front page. We'll talk about that. The book review is Thomas Mann's World. And here's Jen Psaki on the cover of Sunday Styles. She was passed over twice for press secretary during the Obama administration. Sunday Review cover is, let's see, The Drug Lottery is what it says here. And Sunday Business, the grand reopening postponed, including at the New York Times headquarters itself. Real estate, how old is this old house? Property records may not go far back enough. And the Metropolitan section, which is only distributed in the New York City area, the cover is A Rush of Water and a Rethinking. Of course, the flooding from Hurricane Ida. The New York Times cover for the magazine is When We Could Be Together Again, All We Wanted to Do Was Dance. Bodies on the line. And that's a striking image right there. But what I really wanted to show all of you today is these 5 separate sections for the new season. This is in Arts and Leisure. It's something that's stunning to see that they have 5 separate sections, each of altogether 114 pages. And so they have here, let me show you, this is the art cover, and this is called Double Division. Then this is the pop cover, and on that is Mickey Guyton, Claiming Space. This is Gwen's turn on classical. So this is this dance and classical, Gwen's turn. And then television. And this is Halle Berry's directorial debut on television. And finally, in theater, the cover is Change Agents, Michael Paulson. So 114 pages of just the new season. I imagine we could do an entire read along of just this and still not cover everything. So we've got lots to talk about. We were going to bring on our guest in just a second. If you're joining us, thank you for being here. Let's look at some of the comments that have come in. Mark McDonald is eager to see Johnette from an NYT alum. You'll see Johnette in just a minute. Let's see some other comments. Tim Soane's watching from Shahola, Pennsylvania. Hi, Tim. Good morning. And Jonathan Borstein is watching from the East Village. And just great to have everybody here. So thank you very much. Marion Berkeley is watching from Hell's Kitchen in New York City. And hello, welcome. Diane Stefani is watching. And Diane is watching from South Jersey. And Sudha Parekh, that's Neil's mom, is watching from Hastings on Hudson, the town that Neil grew up in. All right, I think we're ready to bring on Johnette. Pradnya says, good morning from Silver Spring, Maryland. Diana is watching from Nebraska. Welcome. We love having this group of folks from all over the world. Laura Silverman says, interesting way to divide arts and leisure into 5 categories. And we'll talk about that as we go along. So much to talk about. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. We're just delighted to bring you now Our guest for today, Johnette Howard, is with us, and she collaborated on Billie Jean King's autobiography, All In, which was released just last month and has debuted at number 5 on the New York Times bestsellers list. So that is so exciting. Please follow Johnette at Johnette Howard on Twitter. So with that, let's bring her on. Hello.
Hello, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate you being here. Are you a Sunday morning person?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love the Sunday paper is one of the great pleasures in life, I think. It always has been since I was a kid.
Oh, that's so nice. So can you tell us a little bit about where you are, how you're doing? How did your family handle the pandemic? It's not over yet. This is what, when I say that, sometimes I feel like, oh, it's over, but we're still in it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was thinking yesterday that I have a really sort of unscientific approach to it because I wear my mask all the time. And then there are times that I walk down the street and I think it's okay to take off and I don't. I've been lucky. Everybody in my family has been well. We did have a couple members of my family test positive, but they came through it great. In my case, I had this project to work on and I was really grateful for that because it was completely absorbing and sort of coincided almost exactly with the start of the pandemic. So I was lucky in a way that I was not felt as bereft, from contact because we just adjusted to how we work.
And of course, authors, when they're in the midst of doing their books, are isolated mostly anyway. So I think that would have worked out. And I'm so glad you got the book out because I've been reading about the supply chain issues in the book publishing world and how authors are being told that many books this fall are going to be delayed because of that.
Yeah, well, and actually this one was too. I think there was some deliberation about bringing it out sooner because we were done last fall, and we still had the fine tune editing to do. But it was a deliberate decision to bring it out this year instead, and it was really because of COVID.
And of course, you wanted to time it to the U.S. Open. Let's talk about Billie Jean King for a minute here. An incredible athlete, a pioneer in so many ways. There may be people who are watching today who don't know her entire story. So tell us a little bit about Billie Jean King and also your connection and relationship with her.
Sure. Billie Jean is somebody that has had an extraordinary sweep to her life. She's 77 years old, and so given a capsule biography is kind of tough. She was born in 1943 at a time when women and girls weren't involved in sports much at all, and grew up in sort of the time of tumult. It was the civil rights era. It was the women's rights, feminism had just sort of taken off. It was anti-war protests. So there was this sort of tumult around her. She also grew up in a family where she was told she could be anything she wanted to be, just like her brother, and was sort of a blue-collar existence, and they had limited means. But I think that spark of imagination she always had with her, and so when she got to the point that she was a top tennis player and saw the divergence in treatment between the boys that she was just as good as and her own existence, it sort of touched off something in her, and that's never stopped. And I think in the beginning, the thing that surprises people, her activism was really animated more by the civil rights movement and particularly Althea Gibson breaking the color line in tennis. Althea was an African American champion from Harlem who had relocated her family from South Carolina. So that was the genesis of it. Billie's sort of known in the sports world for winning 39 Grand Slam or major titles, and she founded the first women's pro tennis tour. She founded the Women's Sports Foundation. She fought for Title IX, the seminal legislation that made it possible for girls and women to get scholarships. When she was in school, there was a survey done that there were less than 50 athletic scholarships available to women. And there were more than that on one football team at the time in college football. So she's been an extraordinarily significant fixture in the sports world and culture at large, because I think it was tomorrow will be the anniversary of her playing Bobby Riggs in 1973 in the Battle of the Sexes match. That was watched by 90 million people worldwide. An extraordinary event that put a focus on gender roles and showed how a lot of women were in the same sort of space that she was, as far as being unhappy about the roles they were consigned to and the pressure to conform to them.
You told us so much about. Oh, here's the.
There it is.
The Chauvinist Clash, and King will win in 4 sets. Was great. Grace Lichtenstein's piece, and then Neil Amdor wrote Riggs will win in 3 sets. And Neil was on our show. He was on
Neil's a great guy.
Yeah, he was assigned to do this, right? He was assigned to write that Riggs would win.
Well, Neil was a real supporter of the work that Billie did, and I don't think without his help at the Times, it would have got quite the serious consideration it did. When they broke away in 1970, he made, in the course of the research, I saw a story that he had written where he covered the press conference where they signaled their intentions to boycott the tournament that they did and start their own tour, and he made it front page news. It was his byline.
Yeah.
So Neil gets a break on picking Riggs.
He was amazing. And by the way, folks, if you're interested in any of our former guests on the show, they're all archived and available on our YouTube channel. So if you just look for SriNet, you can find youtube.com/SriNet. Well, we've got so much to talk about, Johnette. Thank you again for being here, folks. We're talking to Johnette about her book that she collaborated with Billie Jean King. We're going to be talking about her career. So tell us a little bit about your journey in journalism, and then we'll get right into the paper.
Okay. I grew up in Pittsburgh at a time when the teams were winning championships, the Steelers and the Pirates. And I also had an uncle that was in Major League Baseball. He always used to joke he was a poor hitting catcher that somehow made the Pennsylvania Hall of Fame. So I sort of always had a connection to sports. And in Pittsburgh, it was a real family thing. It was a sort of cultural touchstone. Everybody on Sundays got together and couldn't wait for the Steelers to play, and it's still that way. So I was sort of grew up in that culture. I loved to write, and my parents had always told me that if I wanted a book, they would never say no. So not toys, not whatever, but if it was a book. And so I had that grounding as a kid. My mother was a Catholic school teacher, and my dad was a graphic artist. So there was a sort of spirit of creativity where I grew up too. And the people that came through our lives, because of my dad. So I had all that in the background. But the problem was women sports writers didn't really exist then when I was a kid. Somebody asked me the other day if I always dreamed of being one, and I said there weren't any. There were hardly any. And so what happened was Melissa Ludke, who sued for equal access to locker rooms in 1978, and I think it was decided in 79. And I was in college at the time, and I was aware of that, and it changed my whole career trajectory. So I had the fight in the beginning. I was often people tried to steer me to PR or sports information departments or writing straight news rather than sports. And it was a struggle in the beginning, but I was just determined to do it. It was the only thing I really loved.
I'm so glad you did. For folks not familiar with this was a landmark incident where women sports journalists were trying to get access to the locker room, because the locker room after the game is where the sports figures and the reporters, all male, would get to chat and get quotes and all that good stuff. But the men resisted having women in the locker room.
Yeah, it was more. It was the sports organizations, but it was tough. There was a competition for jobs and resources, and I think male colleagues were often difficult too. We sort of caught it from both sides.
And I saw just last night, I tweeted that there's going to be the first ever female play-by-play announcer for a major sports team in the United States in any of the 4 professional sports, when they just announced Lisa Byington as the Milwaukee Bucks play-by-play announcer. So here we are in 2021, and that's an achievement. I mean, it's great that she achieved it, but the fact that it's taken this long is really sad.
Yeah, and I think that to be fair, there have been women color analysts.
Sure.
Analysts. Susan Waldman with the Yankees, for example, does a terrific job.
Great,
She's,
very
good. Been there a couple decades, and she's a real reporter. You'll see her before the game with a notebook going around talking to people after the game. She really knows her stuff. There are other people that have done analysis. Sherry Ross has done NHL hockey. But this is a big. There have been women that have done play-by-play on a spot basis, but to be the full-time play-by-play broadcaster of the NBA champions is an enormous achievement, and I'm happy it happened in the NBA because David Stern, who really turned the league around, was a huge supporter of women in the beginning. So it's nice to see it happen there.
One of the things that we hear is that there's so many now opportunities for women, and that's been something that's obviously come along. But the NBA in particular, if you can just talk about that, it seems to me if there will ever be a head coach who's a woman in a major sport in the U.S., it's like for a men's team, it's likely to be in the NBA. And there are a couple of women on track, aren't there? Yeah,
and I think it will happen at some point. I think that there's a few factors about the NBA that make it significantly progressive ahead of the other leagues, and one of them is the fact, I strongly believe this, that it's a black majority league, black power structure, and I think people are more attuned to the discrimination and stuff that goes on because it's a daily feature of their life, and they transfer it to other people who are seen as minorities. I had an interesting example of that back early when I still worked in Detroit. Magic Johnson had just gone out with his HIV diagnosis, and there was a real question in sports if there should be mandatory AIDS testing for everybody. And I was assigned to go to all 4 teams in town and ask them. I went to the hockey team, the NHL hockey team, the baseball team, which was majority white, the NBA team, the Pistons, and I think I went to some colleges. And it was fascinating to me that the white guys almost invariably would say, "Yeah, I don't care. They can test me." And the black guys almost invariably said, "How will the results be used?" Because they were used to not trusting systemic, systems to advocate for their rights and treat them fairly. So it was just a little sign of the awareness and the different experience that the populations of people feel. So it's not surprising to me that it's the NBA. I think it will happen. I think David Stern's, when he was commissioner, his ability to support women. There were only 3 of us when I first began covering the NBA as a beat writer. That was 1985 or 6. And he called each of us individually and said, "If you have any trouble, you call me and I'll take care of it." That's so guys knew that.
Folks, I just want to thank Richard Deitch, the terrific sports journalist who's now in Toronto, who has just retweeted the show. And so we've got lots of new people watching, hundreds of folks. Thank you. Please welcome to the New York Times Read-Along. That's Johnette Howard, who collaborated on the big new autobiography of Billie Jean King. It's on a bestseller list in the New York Times. And I'm Charisse Srinivasan, and we do this every single Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And we have some fantastic guests and shows coming up in the weeks ahead. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can watch live or watch later. And we've got some great comments coming in as well. Please tell us where you're watching from. Please tell us how your Sunday is going. And if you have any questions about sports, sports journalism, sports media, we've got the right person for you to ask. Chitachi says, "Good morning from Fort Lauderdale." Greetings, welcome. And Cynthia is watching from Italy. Welcome. And it's just great to have so many folks here. And Jessica is watching on Facebook. She's talking about how you had to fight, Johnette, right at the beginning to be a sports journalist in covering the major teams. And for those who missed it, one of the facts that she said that I think I will always remember is that there were 50 scholarships for women in sports in the late 70s or in the early 70s, when in a single team, there could be male football team, there could be 50 scholarships. So that fact tells you how far we've come in sports and sports media. Miriam says, what an interesting comment about different social awareness among the teams depending on racial makeup. And thank you for watching, Miriam. She's watching in Hell's Kitchen. And let's talk about the book. There's the cover. Tell us how that all came together with the cover and the selection, the title, and how did it feel to see the book on the bestseller list?
Well, that was thrilling for me because I wanted Billie's life to be recognized for the import that it's had. And, she's never stopped working. She quit tennis, 40 some years ago, but she's never stopped working for equality or diversity and inclusion. And so it's gratifying for me to see her hopefully recognized as somebody who was more than a sports star and actually used sports as a platform. People talk about it now, and it's become kind of in vogue to talk about sports, the intersection of sports and culture. But she was one of the first people that really got it and sort of embraced. She was one of the first, I think she was, other than Wilma Rudolph, I think Billie was really the first woman who sort of advocated for women as a group, women athletes in particular, but women as a group. And so it was exciting to see that. The title is sort of emblematic of her philosophy for everything. A lot of people always thought because she was a feminist, that she was a separatist, and I always thought it was misconstrued. She's really an egalitarian and thinks everything should be equal. So that's an important point to know about her. It's not that she's advocating for one group over another. It doesn't matter if it comes to race, gender, sexual orientation, whatever. She's always been basically focused on what she's really talking about is that we all deserve basic dignity as human beings. So that's the reason for the title.
By the way, Jessica says perfect title, so there you go.
I was a little concerned, in English, all in. It's hard to say sometimes. It sounds like all in,
And also, you didn't.
I was wrong.
And you didn't put in all in colon and then 15 words after.
Oh, I had the book length subtitle, the first book. It's still a little bit, you look at it and go, wow. But. And Billie, I think, felt that a lot of people have this misapprehension that she has done a lot of autobiographies before. She had done one in 1981 when she was outed against her will. And it actually, I think she always felt was not accurate because she wasn't really free to tell the truth. And so I think for her, this was an important thing from a historical perspective to just sort of set the record straight and get her story down at this stage of her life.
Okay, folks, we're going to be reading the print Sunday New York Times with Johnette in just a minute. We've got so many questions and comments coming in. We have a question about your mentors. We'll talk about that in a bit. We also have Laura Silverman, who says, it's hard to argue against being basic dignity for all human beings. So that's a
you would think, quote. Right?
Yeah, but we know America today, how divided it is and how complicated it is. And Jessica says, and yet, and that is definitely one of the issues. Just a word about equality in tennis. I think tennis was at the forefront of having equal pay for the Grand Slam tournaments. And certainly the US Open was either the first or one of the first to do that. And I know Billie Jean King was involved in making that happen. How much resentment is there still among male tennis players who occasionally complain about that equality, about the number of sets and all of that, when of course we know that the biggest draws in tennis often are women, especially on the American side. The American men have not been playing well.
Yeah, and I mean this recent US Open was just an example. The women's final far outstripped the men's as far as viewership, even though Novak Djokovic was going for the Grand Slam sweep of the majors. So, there's a misnomer about that. The best 3 out of 5 sets argument has always been there, and Billie had to deal with it in her time. And I mean, the basic retort has always been that this is entertainment, and that you don't pay, Frank Sinatra by the minute. You pay him for the quality of the show he puts on. And
Sure.
I mean, they've always made that. I think that the reason that there's still some resentment, I think it was disappointing to a lot of people that Djokovic is now leading this new players association and trying to start something new, and he hasn't spoken or included the women. And this is just a repeat of exactly what Billie went through, 50 years ago. And she's spoken out about it. And I think I know he has talked to Serena, but Serena hasn't talked on the record about it. So it's sort of recreating itself. I wouldn't say that it's as rampant as it was then. If you look at the remarks people made at the time Billie was trying to do it, they're quite astonishing. It wouldn't be tolerated in the public discourse today. But Novak himself has made missteps, including talking about being against equal pay and then walking it back. So
He did
it'll
walk
be
it back?
interesting.
Sorry.
Yeah, this was a few years ago. This was in.
I remember being upset about that, because I got to tell you, I'm a Roger guy, and I like Novak's play, and I think he's done a really good job, and it's fascinating to see, all tied at 21 like this is really special. A word about Serena before we get to the paper. Of course, greatest of all time.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think there's any. I mean, as much as I respect what Margaret Court did, and she came back from having a child twice, not once, which is Serena is trying to do, and it was a different era, and it was a different sort of measure of what was important as far as what tournaments to play. I think Serena, without question, qualitatively, anecdotally, the stats. Is best ever. I don't think there's any question, and I don't think she needs to tie Margaret's record for singles titles to earn that distinction.
And Margaret, of course, has then gone on to say, kind of, very not just politically incorrect, but incorrect things, and drawn a lot of criticism as well along those lines. So, final thing before we get to the paper, where do you think the new exciting the youth in tennis, where does that go, and what does that mean for tennis?
Well, I think it's thrilling, because I think these players are better than ever, and I think that when you look at Leylah Fernandez or Emma Raducanu, the two women that were in the final of the U.S. Open, they have almost complete games already, and they're 18 and 19. It's fascinating to me, and I think it's partly owing to the fact that when you can see people doing extraordinary things, it sort of unlocks a belief in your mind that you can do it too. And I think watching them, the power they hit with, the variety, the intelligence they play with, is revolutionary. I mean, I would be a little careful about, I've seen some stories that say, oh, this is ushering in a new era, and they've played one tournament, and that worries me, because we've seen what the struggles Naomi Osaka's had, and even if you go back to when women's tennis was still allowing young people to play at the age of 15, 16, there was extraordinary fallout from having to grow up in public. And so I think we should just sort of pump the brakes a little and let them win a little bit more, and hope that they have good support teams around them, because the social media dynamics has changed their existence way, way, way more than other athletes used to deal with generations ago.
And for anybody who criticizes Naomi and others for speaking out, I think that they've done such a service to humanity by talking about mental illness and mental strength and mental health and all aspects of being an athlete today. And especially in a solitary sport like tennis, it's different in some team sports. I'd also say that, you look at Bjorn Borg, who was such a great player. He was done at 26. So It's not like, everybody played like Tom Brady till their 40s. And so I think that's an important note to.
I do too. I don't think they felt they had permission to talk about it, because it's sort of anathema to being a top athlete.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that they're giving themselves permission to talk about it sort of dovetails with what's happening with athletes in general. They're insisting more on controlling their careers, their image, their likeness, their content, and I think this is a piece of all of that.
Therese is asking a question about Title IX, and we'll get back to this question. Also, a question about your mentors. We do need to get to the paper. We've had such a great conversation already, 35 minutes, and we haven't even touched the paper yet. So let's get to the paper,
Sri.
Yeah.
Neil's mom is waiting.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do this. So I'm going to just put on my New York Times camera here, and we'll talk about the news. And how I do this, Johnette, as you've seen, is that we'll kind of talk about what's in the paper. You jump in at any point that you'd like to make an observation, criticism, anything, and we'll just keep going, all right? And then you'll get to pick the different sections after we do the front section here.
Okay.
Okay, let's do this. So front page, we're looking, I'm just pulling back here so everyone can see here. The lead story is Biden's agenda and legacy ride on spending bill, an all-in-one New Deal, no support from GOP, and stark divisions among Democrats. So that's going to be fascinating to watch, and kind of America's future in many ways is tied into that. The high-tech killing of a nuclear scientist, a top Iran figure, eluded Israel for years, so it built a machine for the job. So I'm going to be reading that for sure. This is the scientist who was assassinated in his car last year. Some of you will remember that story. Stunning shot, but lining up for shunning shot, not stunning shot. I'm in tennis mode here, Johnette. Shunning shot, but lining up for antibodies. A costly therapy soars in the unvaccinated, and this is one of the things that Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, has forced on the world, because these people think that it's, we'll just get the antibodies. It's expensive, it's hard to find, and the vaccine is free and easily available. So upsetting to see that.
It still continues to stun me this far, and I saw that there were 670,000 Americans that have died so far, and that we're still having this debate when you can see the efficacy of the vaccine. It's astonishing to me.
Yeah, our producers will correct me, but I believe the number is 80 million eligible Americans have not taken the vaccine. Just as billions of people around the world are begging for the vaccine, right. 80 million Americans have not taken it. Just horrible. So that says, Johnette, thank you for bringing out women's empowerment, racial issues, and pioneer issues for women in sports in your book. And you proved to break the ceiling yourself as a sports journalist. Thank you. So that's a lovely comment there from Sudha. Britain returns to global stage as broker in U.S.-Australia deal. So there's a whole, the great powers are again fighting, but Britain, France are all involved in kind of diplomatic divisions going on right now. And Nashville's parties on wheels, Rolling Fun or Frankenstein. So I don't know about these. Have you heard about these parties on wheels?
Yes, and I vote for Frankenstein.
Okay. And look at this, momentous mission ends. After 3 days in orbit, the 4-person, all non-professional astronaut crew splashed down in Florida of SpaceX's Inspiration 4. So that was a great story. You know, those early days of Billie Jean King was also when the space race and the space mission were all out there happening at the same time.
Yeah, when she was a young woman, she was playing in Russia when some cosmonauts returned from space, and they were parading them through the streets. I don't think the poor guys even got to take a nap. And they were playing at a stadium in Moscow and were delayed 2 hours. The crowd waited for them because it was so rare to get tennis there from outside the Iron Curtain. But yeah, her life is intersected with a lot of things.
Yeah, that's really nice. Now look at this headline from 1934 in the New York Times. Soviet is inducted as League member. The League of Nations, which is the precursor of the UN, welcomed Russia by a vote of 39-3. And what strikes me is that headline sounds like there's a word missing, right? Like I thought it was about a single person, like Soviet. Right. But that's what the New York Times used, I guess, to save space or whatever. But this sounds odd to my ear now. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Here to help, how grandparents can stay close to busy grandkids. And this is a way in which the New York Times has changed over the years. They now have so much what would have been once called service journalism. And there's, I'm a big fan of service journalism as a tech reporter myself. That's what I do. But to see it in so many different aspects of a publication like the New York Times is fun.
Yeah, I remember when I got into newspapers, it was not so long after Woodward and Bernstein, and that was a big motivation for me, the idea that it was a way to do public service.
Nice. And this is, by the way, by Paula Spann, my friend and former colleague at Columbia Journalism School. So great to see her. She's a real expert on intergenerational coverage, media, things like that. New podcasts add to conversation in Cuba. What is your relationship with podcasts? Which are the ones that you listen to? And if you want to give a shout out to any, you can.
Oh, I listen to so many. I'm a bit of an omnivore because I'm more sort of topic driven than I am, what is it, like a loyalist to everything. Sure. Weekly. So it just depends. I'm a sort of a news hound, and I'll read things and then I want to know more and I'll drill down to what I can find. I mean, I tend to skew toward a lot of the stuff on NPR. I think Terry Gross is an amazing interviewer, and it's sort of a thing where I pay attention just to the questions she's asking as much as the answers,
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Canada's having a big election, and this was, as you know, in Canada, the parliamentary system means that you can call for an election ahead of the 5 years or other schedule. So that's what you're seeing there. And there's an ad for Masterclass. I wonder if Billie Jean has done one.
I don't know. That's a good question. I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah. Hong Kong forces group to yank online profile, and that's part of the China cracking down on Hong Kong. U.S. drone strike tarnishes victims twice. And that was the story out of Afghanistan. Horrifying story, right? They thought they were hitting terrorists, but they killed 7 children and 3 adults. And what is not being talked about enough, I think, is that the missile used, when you hear somebody died in an explosion, it's one thing. So of course, it's horrifying. But the weapon they uses blades to do the final damage.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think there's been enough attention paid to that. But I will also say that where were all these journalists talking about all the drone strikes that killed innocent people in Iraq, in Afghanistan, the last 20 years? We have not paid attention, and that's part of the reason we are in this situation today.
Yeah, I think longitudinal coverage has been one of the casualties of the way media has changed. And,
I like that phrase. I've not heard that before. Longitudinal coverage. I'm going to use that. Thank you.
No, I do. I think that it's been a casualty of the fact that a lot of the institutional memory and media organizations has been laid off, run off, things like that. And I think it matters. I tire with this sort of opportunistic coverage.
And here you see a right-wing pundit inspired by Trump eyes the presidency in France. So I thought the problem in France was always going to be Le Pen, who is that right-wing guy we've heard about for 20 years or longer. Yeah. But this is someone else, Eric Zemmour, center in Paris. Though not yet a candidate for president, he has attracted sizable media attention and his poll numbers are rising. So just when you think somebody is terrible, there's like somebody comes along who might be even worse. The demand for vaccine rises in Senegal. Again, that story that we talked about, right? That there are people who need the vaccine all over the world. From calm to chaos, killings shake holy city in Iraq. Iran-backed militia fighters target protesters. And let's see here. Oh, look at this is an unusual ad. This is from Philip Morris International. Unsmoke the future. We're delivering a smoke-free future faster. And just like when BP starts saying that their BP stands for Beyond Petroleum, you gotta be skeptical when you look at things like this.
Yeah, I want to know more how that's going to happen.
Yeah. What was the effect and sorry to put you on the spot, but like Virginia Slim sponsoring tennis in a big way, how good was it for tennis in terms of the money, but how problematic was it in terms of what they were selling?
Oh, it was determinative for them. They would not have made it without them. And in addition to the sort of financial capital that that was expended by Virginia Slims, the man that ran it at the time, Joseph Coleman III, I think what also mattered was that he had been deeply involved at the USTA, was forget the title now, executive director or chairman of the US Open, but so he expended personal capital as well. And I think that was just as influential. He thought tennis was too stratified and not diverse enough. And he was a Jewish man who couldn't join a lot of the clubs where these tournaments were played. So that's why he got involved. Billie had a problem with it, and others did too, that they felt like they should not accept a sponsorship from them. But Gladys Heldman, who had helped Billie found the tour along with 8 other women, she was the sort of business brains of the operations, said, do you want a tour or not? And Billie was like, good point, you know. And I think Billie always had a problem with it and always said so. The thing that I think helped them was they felt like they didn't have to endorse cigarette smoking. They took the sponsorship, and, you know, you can say that's a sort of rationalization, but that's how they handled it.
Well, and it's hard for us now to know the exact situation they were in back then. I'll also just look at this lovely comment here. Pit82 on Twitter says, no one better than Johnette Howard.
Oh, that's nice. Whoever you are, thanks.
It may turn out to be somebody you know, but because
it's probably a guy I went to school with, because I went to Pitt and I got out in '82. So I can't see. It might be it might be a guy, Jeff, that I worked with on the school paper.
Oh, that's
so
yeah,
cool. I hope so. If it is, hi.
By the way, I saw a cruise ship in New York City yesterday. I'm just showing this ad, and I was thinking, boy, I love cruises. We've been on 3 as a family, but you couldn't pay me enough to be on a cruise now.
No, my sister goes, and and she's a nurse, and my brother-in-law, her husband, is a surgeon, and I keep thinking, well, if they feel okay, but I wouldn't do it.
We found out the mystery of who Pit 82 is. Amin Ghosein.
Oh, yeah. Hi. He was the assistant sports editor, and I was the sports editor at the Pitt News. Got to give a shout out to the Pitt News.
Yes. Okay, let's keep going here. Did you watch the California recall with?
I read it. I didn't watch it.
I was so horrified by Larry Elder. And you know, I watch a lot of, I did a long Twitter thread, and I said that I watch a lot of Fox. A lot of people who criticize Larry Elder has really no idea who he is. Right. I know Larry Elder's work from listening to talk radio and Rush Limbaugh and things like that for 25 years. It horrifies my wife when I listen to Fox or watch Fox.
Yeah, but you have to, you know.
And hey, my mom's watching from Carolina.
All right, the moms are both in the house.
Yes. Hey, we got 2. That's why we guaranteed 2 viewers every single Sunday. Hi, Amma, love you so much. I've not seen you in 2 years because of the pandemic, but can't wait to see you. Have you been to India, Johnette?
Have I been to India? No, it's a place I want to go. I've gotten close, but I haven't been there. I would love to go to India. It's a little daunting to me because there's so many places that look fascinating that I'm not sure where I would want to start.
I hear you. I will say it's a tennis crazy country, relatively speaking. And if you get there, if you have any plans, let us know, because the sports journalists would love to talk to you. And,
that'd be great.
And there would be lots of interesting things. So here's an ad for the U.S. Open. A week after it was over, they list out all the winners. So as we look at this, maybe you'll give us like a psychiatrist. I'll just ask you to give us quick your thoughts on each person. So Emma Raducanu, who is the women's singles.
I think she has a great chance to be Osaka's main rival.
Men's singles, Daniil Medvedev.
I love watching him. He's like a mad scientist. He's problem solves throughout the match, and I think he's fascinating to watch. He has his own style.
But you do believe that Novak will win more Grand Slams?
Yeah, I do. I do. And
he will end with the most, right?
Yeah, and I think he will deserve to be called best ever. I think
his head-to-head with the others is just too good, right?
Yeah.
This is why, even though I told you I was a Roger guy, it's hard to say he's better than Nadal when Nadal has a better record against him. Right?
Yeah, and I love Roger if you asked me who was the most beautiful player to watch, I would say him.
Yeah.
In addition to being, I mean, he's like 1A as far as best ever, but
And
I
did
think
like very little entourages, like entourage stuff going on, like compared to other folks.
yeah, he's a fascinating guy, and I think one of the things that's always been interesting to me about him is he truly finds a way to find joy in everything he does, and I think that's allowed him to stay on the tour as long as he has. It doesn't seem like there's a tedium to it that seems to grip other people when it comes to him.
All right, can you explain girls singles and boys singles, both Robin Montgomery?
No.
So that's a typo.
I think that's a typo. Yeah.
So, I mean, imagine this ad and how much this cost and everything, and having that typo.
I mean, if Robin did that,
Yeah.
good on him.
And also, what does it say about the U.S. Open? How progressive it is, or you know, brother and sister both named Robin. Something. There's a famous author named Dominique Lapierre who wrote The Fifth Horseman and Is Paris Burning and books like that. Freedom at Midnight. His wife's name Dominique Lapierre.
Oh my God.
So that would have been interesting. All right, somebody fact check this for us. Meanwhile, wheelchair tennis and wheelchair men's and women's singles, women's doubles. Actually, we don't have time to go through everything, but just looking here, obviously, in my eyes, we have men's doubles. For Rajiv Ram, and that's an Indian name. I didn't know an Indian had won men's doubles.
Great tradition of doubles in India.
Yeah, and so that's really great to see. I did not know about that. All right, let's keep going here. This is the amateur quartet finishes the 3-day space mission. Even Bezos only got 11 minutes, something like that, in space. Huge police response to sparse protest at the Capitol. I'm so glad nothing happened.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking. The Nasher Sculpture Center proudly presents Neri Bagramian, the Nasher Prize laureate. So that's nice. Look at this ad. Beautiful picture too.
Yeah.
And we are looking at the obit section. We're fascinated by the obits here on the show. I love
the obits.
Yeah. And have you ever written one?
Oh yeah, I've done many. And you when you're young and they tell you to do it, you feel a little squeamish, and then you find out that, and this is the story that gets repeated a million times, when you call the people, they're grateful to talk about the people they love, and it becomes a really fascinating thing. And I always felt a big obligation to do right by them and write a story that would make them proud.
Look at this. Joan Washington 74, who taught stars how to tweak their R's and sound less posh.
I could have used that. I have the Pittsburgh slur. I would like to sharpen it up a little.
By the way, shout out to one of my favorite movies of all time, The Debt, starring Jessica Chastain, about a kind of alternate history of or a small portion of the Holocaust. And we're always looking at the obits, and so sad, as you said, 600,000 Americans dying. Jessica, fact-checking for us. Thank you. Danielle Winkholm won the boys title, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
And we also always tell people, check out Miss You Graham if you are interested in telling the story of someone who has passed. Miss You Graham is a way to honor those who have passed away, and you can find it on iOS and Android. And then look at this. The NFL's first openly gay player lets a milestone pass quickly. And this is the story of Carl Nassib, who had declared he was gay. I'm not sure what the milestone they're describing. Of course, himself.
Yeah, first active out gay player.
No, but it wasn't quiet. I mean, that's the way we know it. He came out, so I'm not sure why they mean it passed quietly. It was great to see him.
I think his first game, there wasn't much comment. Yeah, it was the first regular season game. That was kind of technically the record.
Right, and again, Billie Jean's ability to affect kind of popular culture with what happened to her, but she wasn't able to come out in her own terms.
No, she was outed by a former romantic partner about 6 years after they had ended the relationship. The woman wanted financial support and wouldn't vacate a house that Billie owned, and took her to court. And that's how Billie was outed. And it was quite traumatic. She was abandoned overnight by all her sponsors.
Oh my goodness. And then what was the turning point later when she was obviously able to come back and have, be the icon she is today.
Come back and play, or
no, just come back in in
life.
In life, yeah.
I think that it was a journey for her, and she didn't really. She had some internalized homophobia that's not uncommon for people of her generation. As I said, she's 77, and there was a lot of ritual shaming, and I mean, the real fears of violence. And if you look at, and also destroying her professional life that she had built, which was actually happened. I mean, that she kept playing. She had 6 knee surgeries and kept playing because her retirement strategy had been exploded. And she played until she was 39, despite 6 knee surgeries. So the way she came back was just telling the truth. But it was a sort of abridged version of the truth for a long time because, again, she didn't feel safe. And one of the things we point out in the book is who turns getting outed into going deeper into the closet. It was a real journey for her. And I don't think until she was 50, she says she felt comfortable in her own skin.
Wow, it's so difficult and hard for anyone on the outside to be able to judge that.
The context is really important. Yeah.
Tatachi says, wow. And Carla says, I'm so impressed with the mental strength that Billie Jean King has exhibited throughout her life. Thank you. Very important point. And then, we couldn't close the sports section without a tennis story. New York's first Davis Cup match since 1981 is Venezuela versus South Africa, ? An event returns to an ancestral home of tennis in the United States. I loved Davis Cup growing up. In golf, they take Ryder Cup very seriously, but somehow Davis Cup has kind of fallen by the wayside.
Yeah, it's a casualty of the fact that tour doesn't make space for it, and these athletes compete literally 11 months a year, and so they have to prioritize, and they're traveling around the world playing under high stress, and sometimes it doesn't work for them as far as scheduling, and I do think they don't see the return on it as far as public approbation or anything like that.
Oh, but what a story about I want to read that. Why is Venezuela playing?
I don't know either. I got to read that too.
And why have they not had the Davis Cup here since 1981? That makes no sense. Okay, you get to pick the next section. We've got about half an hour with Johnette Howard. She is the collaborator with Billie Jean King on the big new autobiography, number 5 on the bestseller list. And we would love to have you share this with your friends and family. We're live right now, but you can watch immediately after on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And please hit share, tag a friend, someone in the world who loves sports, loves tennis, loves Billie Jean King and everything she's done. Please tag so that they can share this and watch it live or later on any of the channels. Okay, you get to pick where we go next.
Well, I'm fascinated by Jen Psaki, so I'd love to go there. I think she's been when she said when she took the job that she wasn't going to stick around long, for the whole term. I was disappointed because I love the kind of demeanor she projects and her willingness to sort of take on tough questions and dish things back, because as we've discussed earlier, this is an age of misinformation, and it's been fascinating. I think she's the right person for the job at this time. I hope she sticks around.
Yeah, and she, by the way, gives back as good as she gets from Pete Ducey and others. So I'm glad the Times is not emphasizing the combative nature of it, but she says she may still not answer your question, though. No more bully pulpit.
Well, I think this is a thing that I don't know if you feel the same, Sri, but that early on when you're a journalist, this idea of objectivity and what does it mean, and sometimes the objective truth is somebody is lying, and there's nuanced definitions of that. But I'm saying there are still really times where there is a truth,
sure.
And I think that's what's so, to me, invigorating about watching her is I feel in the past there's been this sort of politesse, or like kind of allowing this to be this civil debate when it's an uncivil result, and I that's why I love watching her.
What'd you think of the Tax the Rich dress by AOC?
I saw Maureen Dowd thought it was one of your opinion columnists at the time had said that she thought it was a lightweight sort of opportunistic thing to do instead of owning it. I disagreed. I thought it was completely in character, and I thought it was an opportunity to kind of crash the ball and make the people there confront that in a way that in person rather than, if it had been in the paper the next day alone.
Sure. I worked at the Met for 3 years, so I understand the context of that gala. For her to do that was really, putting a spotlight on that topic, and I think that's great. And by the way, again, how much things have changed America. Kumail Nanjiani has his own ad for Saks Fifth Avenue, which is just awesome to see. Let's see here. T.S. Madison offers a special prayer. Do you read the Modern Love column?
Yeah, sometimes, not every time, because it's sometimes it's funny. I don't like to read sad things sometimes. Like friends laugh at me because even when I watch those cooking shows and somebody gets whacked, I feel bad.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So sometimes I'll skip it if I see that it's some horrid thing,
And there are a lot of sad stories in the Modern Love column. By the way, this is one of the highlights of the show, was on Valentine's Day. We had Daniel Jones, the editor of Modern Love, on, and he told us all the secrets of the Modern Love column. So people should go back and look at that. Hearing his voice changed everything. And then they have these tiny love stories, which are so short that I can actually just quickly read one. So, Tiny Love Story by Lorraine Duffy Merkel. In some pre-fall cleaning, I waded through more than 2,500 family photos. Not only one made me cry. It wasn't the image of me in my parochial school jumper, but my mother's note on the back of that picture. October 1964, Lorraine's first grade, my first day of work. She became a single mother when I was 2. After years out of the workforce, she returned as a telephone company operator. Many of the employees were younger. My mother must have been scared, but she did it for us. And in 1984, she retired as an executive of the same company. So sorry that's about tears, but I think it's a happy story.
No, that's a fantastic story. Shows you love comes in all kind of iterations and ways.
We had a lovely comment I want to read that just came on the screen, where Liz James says, "So great to get these insights from such an experienced and renowned sports journalist."
Liz is a friend in Australia.
Wow.
Wonderful to hear from her.
Yeah, late night in Australia. Thank you.
Hey, Liz. Hey, Harry. Her son is Harry.
Very nice. And Pradnya says, I could carry Jen Psaki's bags if she asked me to. Yes, you could. A lot of people. And Jean says, beautiful Jen Psaki picture. The Times photographers are so amazing.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And that she was talking about the cover. And then look at this. They're really hitting the red hair. In different. There's a second image where the hair is dominating the picture. So, yeah. And then Rolex, big sponsor of tennis at the highest levels.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the social cues column, which we love, where this is not the etiquette column, but this is the etiquette, not the ethics column. I'm going to read a random question to you and then we'll read Philip Galland's answer. This is not a quiz, no right or wrong answers, so don't worry. Okay, where's my sandwich? At least once a week, someone steals my sandwich from the communal fridge in our office. I bring lunch to save money, so it's doubly annoying. How do you feel about notes on refrigerator doors asking thieves to seize? So this goes back to the time when people were all in the office. So let's hear your thoughts.
For the note, although I can also share a sort of proactive thing that might help. When I had a dog that used to grab my food all the time, the trainer used to give the advice that you make a wasabi sandwich and you put it there and they'll never steal it again because
I love it.
So you can do the note, you can do the wasabi sandwich on a nice slice of rye and see what happens. You'd know who did it if you did that.
Exactly. They're all red and crying. It can't hurt, right? Is what he says.
It's not lethal.
Yeah. If the person taking your sandwich as a hardened thief, a note will probably have little effect. But if that person is doing the wrong thing without thinking about it, maybe clouded by laziness or hunger, your note may help. I'm hungry too. Please don't eat my sandwich. And Paula is saying that, well, let's make wasabi sandwiches a trend. And let's see here. No travel needed to wed in Utah. The marriage process is completely virtual, allowing for international unions. I didn't know that. And Jeff Probst is the ultimate survivor. 21 years and 41 seasons. You know, it's the first time I've realized how come they have so many seasons, because at about 20 seasons, I was like, can't be that long. I mean, it's been on the air for a long time, but they obviously do 2 a year, which I hadn't realized. And that's what you see there. And then The Truth Takes a Journalist. There's an ad for the New York Times and for journalism. And we had one of the Vows editors on our show talking about this entire process. And one of the things, you know, we've talked about gay rights here. To see men and women couples like this, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, it's and I love to read the stories of how they met, and the idea that people still believe in marriage as an institution, and particularly people that didn't think it would ever be accessible to them.
And having that, and celebrating it is so great. You know, so much has changed. If we talk about in your years in journalism and in the media, same-sex marriage has got to be right up there with marijuana acceptance for the most part, and a couple of other things.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to know Edie Windsor, who was a plaintiff against the Supreme Court. And just her story was an extraordinary story of perseverance and sort of enduring the discrimination and never letting it harden your heart. And she used to stand underneath the window of her sister's office in Union Square because her sister wouldn't talk to her because she was gay. And, 60 years later, she brings this seminal Supreme Court case that helped hasten gay marriage. So it's quite an amazing thing. I mean, even in the context of the book, Billie Jean's book, Billie discusses having an abortion in there, and she's obviously a gay rights activist, and the Christian Science Monitor called it the sports book of the year. So we've come a long way. We've come a really long way.
That's so important. You get to pick where we go next. We have about 20 minutes with Johnette Howard, legendary sports journalist, collaborator with Billie Jean King on her autobiography called All In, and it does not have a book-length subtitle, as we discussed earlier.
Short and sweet, easy to remember.
And there it is on the bestseller list. You get to pick where we go next.
Okay, let me see the.
We also have sports and business, and not sports, but we did.
There was a book review. Was it Thomas Mann?
Yes, Thomas Mann. So let's go.
Yeah, let's go there.
Yeah. And The Magician. So there are 2 books about Thomas Mann out: Reflections of a Non-Political Man and The Magician by Colm Toibin. The other books, this is Thomas Mann, translated by Walter D. Morris. So that's interesting. As we flip through this, please feel free to jump in if you have read any of these books or have a recommendation, apart from, of course, reading All In. And we have great comments coming in. Please keep sharing them. David Phillips's book, Alpha, about Eddie Gallagher and the war for the soul of the Navy SEALs. This is the Trumpification of the Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
So, another ad for Masterclass. I know people addicted to the spelling bee feature on the New York Times app. And Anderson Cooper must have a book coming out. Yes, he does. Vanderbilt, The Rise and Fall of the American Dynasty.
Oh, that's interesting.
Keeps a biography of the Fonz. He says, Henry Winkler was very important to me when I was a child. I saw Henry Winkler as the Fonz on Happy Days, and I loved it. My immigrant, I was just fresh off the boat here, and so my parents were horrified that I was watching show with dating and in there and people making out and
oh, that's so funny.
Guys and Dolls. You remember that?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Laverne and Shirley, same thing.
Yeah. By the way, he is terrific in Barry, the show with Bill Hader on HBO, right, about a messed up assassin, and Henry Winkler, who still has incredible hair, is such a good actor on that show. And Jessica says same for Fonz, #Fonz. And especially, with all the horrifying revelations about your childhood icons, as we've seen,
Yeah.
all these terrible men, it's great to see the Fonz is still out there and doing good.
You know what? I would love somebody, if they're, the audience, to explain to me is why Matthew McConaughey's book has lit such a fuse. Like it seems like it's been on the list for a long time, and I haven't read it, and so I was curious what it is about it that appeals, because it seems to me like such an unlikely,
But he's a character, right? Like he plays an odd person in real life too, right? He's quirky, and not that I follow a lot of what he does, but he's just always.
Yeah, me neither. That's why I'm curious. Yeah.
But he's always like, he's going to run for governor of Texas. He's going to teach at U of T, and then the kind of things he sometimes says.
Yeah.
He's a character in himself, right? So, Shutdown: How COVID Shook the World's Economy by Adam Tooze. I don't know if I'm ready to read books about all of this because we're still living in it. Made in China: A Memoir of Love and Labor by Anna Chu, and House of Sticks, a memoir by Lynn Tran. Memoirs by immigrant women. And A Superfluity of Nuns, the rich literary history of Sisters of the Cloth. I went to Catholic school in multiple continents, so I have lots of good memories and some adventurous memories with our nuns and fathers and others. Through Thick and Thin, a biography of Dostoevsky's enterprising and long-suffering second wife, the gambler wife, a true story of love, risk, and the woman who loved Dostoevsky.
I love these kind of things. We're the partners of these people in life. You find out all the fascinating kind of ways that their roles were hidden. Van Gogh, the whole Van Gogh immersion shows that are in New York now, and the biographies, and they're talking about how his brother's wife is really responsible for him getting the attention that he did.
Yeah, there's very interesting stuff there, and great to just see all these books. What are you reading right now?
Right now, I just finished an Oliver Sacks autobiography. I've always been fascinated with him. It's not a new book, but I've always been fascinated with him because of he did these episodic stories about the human mind, and I had seen a scientist once speak about how the brain is the last frontier, that science is really sort of mystified by. Even space, we have a sort of grasp of it more than we do the inner world. And so I've read all his books because I just find it his observations, and he's a guy that really listens and thinks creatively in an expansive way. And so I wanted to see about his creation story. I'm always fascinated by people's creation stories, and he's done a couple autobiographies, but I felt it important to read this one, so I did.
Great. Tainted Water was only the beginning. I'm just going to quickly look at the Sunday Review before we start to wind up here. Past Manchin's voting bill, and Bitcoin cosplay is getting real. And what if? This you don't want to be trending because you wrote a terrible column in the New York Times, but that's what Ross Douthat has done. What if COVID were 10 times deadlier? People were making fun of it all day long yesterday on Twitter about this conservative basically saying, only 1 in 500 had died. Imagine if 1 in 50 Americans had died, how bad that would be. And
I don't,
stupid point.
No, I think he deserves the spanking.
Yeah. Maureen Dowd, never complain, never explain. I'm not sure what that is.
That's what I alluded to before.
Oh, that's the piece we're saying, yeah.
It's about owning your activism.
Sure. And then we just also want to just quickly glance at the Times Magazine, if I can find it here. And of course, these 5 separate sections. So
that's fantastic.
So I'm going to just ask you if you are looking forward to, in any of these categories, something this coming season. And you may not know, like I know very little about what's coming out, but
I'm in New York City this weekend, and I went last night to a play, Letters to Charisse, which was fantastic, an off-Broadway play, and it's one of only a few that have reopened, but it's exciting to see art back in a live setting.
Can you spell that?
It's, I hope I said it right, Sureesh, Letters from Charisse.
That's a name?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, it sounds like an Indian name.
Yeah, it was. It was
Oh.
one of the main characters was an Indian
Oh.
man, and there was a Japanese character, two of them, and
okay. Well, I've got it. I'll definitely look that up. So that's funny. That's the theater section. So we'll move on from theater. Let's talk about dance or classical. Are you a fan of either?
Classical, yeah.
Yeah. And so this is, I guess, the dance. This is Gwen's turn. Is the cover here? Sorry, we should just say what's on the cover. Change agents. Broadway's brimming with black playwrights as theater's gatekeepers respond to demands for diversity. But the questions loom. Well, the question looms: will it last? Very good.
Will they be supported? Yeah, it's a break from the revivalist tradition of Broadway. You know, Kiss Me Kate in Chicago. I mean, Chicago's back.
Oh, wow. Well, look, Johnette, you're teaching me.
There
stuff.
you are.
So
Lonnie.
Yeah, Letters of Suresh, and that's how you say the name, and by Rajiv Joseph, who's a terrific playwright. So I didn't even know this exists. So how can I?
It's wonderful.
And by the way, I was born in Japan, so I have to see this, right?
Oh, it's wonderful. It was just spectacular.
Okay, excellent. So that's good to know. Thank you.
Beautifully written.
Yeah. Did you catch any? This is the art section. Did you catch any museums or anything when you were here?
No, I might go today to the Whitney.
Oh, good. The beautiful reimagination of that. Okay, in pop music, what's your music? What are you listening to?
Everything. It depends. I had a friend that used to give me all the world music stuff, and you know, it's time consuming to wade through the stuff you like, but I will listen to anything. Jazz. I love jazz. I love world music. I love a good, pop tune that has a hook.
Nice. And then in television, what's your?
I don't watch too much TV.
Is that right? You're not binging anything?
Nah, I mean, I'm trying to think of the last thing I did. I mean, it's usually with friends. It's more of a social thing with me. They'll tell me something's great, and we'll get together and binge something. But when I was doing the book, I was so absorbed in that I kind of drifted. I'm trying to think what's the last thing I even binged. Oh, The Morning Show on Apple TV.
Yeah, that's that media, looking at the media from the inside, I think is fascinating. Did you catch Good Girls Revolt?
No.
That's about the Newsweek revolt of women trying to break the story there. I mean, break the barriers there. And Jessica has a recommendation: Ted Lasso.
No, I have heard everybody talking about that. I'm going to have to check that out. Yeah,
and you especially all the sports in it is interesting. And by the way, shout out to Jessica sticking with us for the 90 minutes. That's great. And thank you for doing that, Jessica. So we are winding up here. Let's, we barely covered things in here. Tell me about your relationship with print. Do you subscribe to any print publications, and how do you think about print versus digital in today's world?
It's interesting. A gentleman that came up in our messages, Mark McDonald, that a Times alum, taught at Michigan and Kalamazoo College, and he would require his students to read the paper copy of the New York Times, because they had no idea how much they were missing when they read online. I mean, I understand that the delivery mode has changed, and that's why we've had this upheaval in the business. But I love them both. I love the immediacy of digital, and I love the fact that it can invoke every medium, sound, motion. It's a sensory experience now instead of just a print experience. And so to that extent, I think it's an amazing innovation that has allowed us to tell stories in a different way. So I love it. It's sad to see what it's done to newspapers that don't have the resources to deliver news that way. That's my sadness. But I'm a staunch believer in strong journalism and a free press and in-depth coverage and longitudinal coverage. And it's so important to me that it persists. And we've seen it with the last administration and the lingering damage and the need for, whatever your politics are, the need for a robust and healthy critique of what's going on is important.
Yeah, well, I thank you. And Jessica says agreed. There was a question from Mark McDonald earlier about your, with so much international experience covering sports, did you ever consider switching to foreign reporting?
Yeah, or straight news. Yeah, as I said, I was steered that way early on, and I did some of it just because I was having trouble getting hired. And later, when I left the Washington Post for Sports Illustrated, they had suggested to me would I'd like to go to the style section, and it was really tempting. Because when I got to Sports Illustrated, I had a little like quasi panic attack, like, oh my God, I don't love sports this much. Because what I really like about it are the issues and the people, and you see something extraordinary, but it invokes all these issues, social, cultural things. And as I said, I was interested in journalism as a service thing. So I did think of it. It didn't last long because it seemed like there was still a lot to explore in sports, and I could still kind of do the same thing in a different context.
All right, we're just going to run through some of the questions that we've gotten. And Chitachi says, this has been a phenomenal conversation. There was a question earlier from Patricia about mentors. So let's give some shout outs.
Yes, it was important. I had a teacher in high school, Jean Carson, who told me, you could really be a good writer someday if you wanted to be. And I don't know why she thought that, but she taught us Ivanhoe and things like that. It was, a miserable as far as the reading list, but she was great. I had a delay in college. I didn't get into journalism to the last semester of my junior year, and then I was determined to graduate and get a job and things like that. And I had an indispensable mentor. His name is Marino Parasenzo. He still lives in Pittsburgh, and he was at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And I just attached myself to that guy, and I would go from class to his office hours to the lunchroom to the parking lot. He'd have to leave to go to work. And I would just follow him and pepper him with questions. And he was always patient with me. He was always helpful. I was lucky that he was such a intelligent guy and an ethical guy, and loved the style of writing and things like that. I was very lucky, very lucky. I would have never made it without him. I still thank him every time something good happens to me, and I still call him Mr. Parasenzo. I'm having trouble hearing you, Neil.
Sorry, can you talk about Billie Jean King's role in Title IX?
Yeah, she likes to say that she didn't really have as much to do with it as some other people, but her match against Bobby Riggs, as I said, had been watched by 90 million people worldwide, 30 million in the U.S., and she was invited to speak after that a few weeks later in Congress before a Senate committee, and was able to tell them directly, her experience and how she might have never. She could have easily been knocked sideways or extinguished her dreams if she had let it, and that institutions in America needed to work for everybody, not just half the population. And she was allied with a guy, Birch Bayh, who was a senator from Indiana, who actually wrote the 37 words that comprised Title IX. And so I think she would give a bigger shout out to people like Edith Green and Birch Bayh and Ted. It's escaping me, Ted Stevens from Alaska, who had helped push the legislation through, but Bernice Saunders, who was an aide to Edith Green. But Billie's example and push for equity across the board. And she started the Women's Sports Magazine. She started the Women's Sports Foundation expressly to protect Title IX. So I think she's a little bit too sheepish about taking the credit she deserves.
I hear you. Wayne Camado is watching, a great designer at the New York Times. Yes. Great listening to a fellow Detroit Free Press sports department alum.
Wayne's a great guy. I remember we were colleagues in Detroit.
And Doug says, great show as usual. Love the opportunity to learn about topics I'm not as familiar with. Thank you. And Doug is up at 5:30 watching us.
Doug,
a guest on the show. He was a guest at 5:30 in the morning. So
wow.
Because he's in California. So imagine being camera ready at 5:30. He had to get the paper at a Starbucks or something. I don't know. It was a very special show. So that was great. And Bill and Doug is tagging people. Everyone just go right in. If you're on Facebook right now or Twitter, just tag someone. They can watch this as soon as we're done, and it'll get the same link forever. So they can watch. And Jessica says, thank you so much for this morning and for All In. The book is a wonder, and I'm absolutely loving it.
Oh, so, Jessica, thank you.
So what I'd like to, and Jonathan says, great show. And Miriam says, I love today's guest, but it's not over. So everyone just stick around. We're going to do a couple of things. And I'm going to come back to Johnette to ask her two things. One is to, we've been promoting the book throughout the show, but we wanted to give her one more time to just sell the book to all of us. And second, we'd love to get a pro tip from her about writing or reporting or journalism. We'd love to have her share that. So we're going to come back to you, Johnette, in just a minute. You can just relax. We'll take you off camera. And I also wanted to just mention, because Johnette had said the importance of mentors, I wanted to just show you this article I wrote about Chandan Mitra, who was my mentor in India, and wrote my grad school application recommendation. And he passed away recently. He's a gentleman on the right. And I so regret not keeping in touch as much as I could have. There's a photo I took of him and the opposition leader in India in 2006. So and the last time we exchanged notes was in 2017. So everyone, please get in touch with a mentor. Don't wait till it's too late. You don't need an excuse. Just call them up and say hi. If necessary, say you heard somebody recommend calling your mentors. Please do that. I have lost multiple mentors in the last few years and will always regret not having made the effort to one more time to reach out, send a note, make a call, send a text message to say thinking of you. It makes a difference. So please, please do that. And we would love for you to do that. And then we've been talking so much about the US Open and everything associated with it that I wanted to show you one of my life highlights of the US, or my life highlight for me is at the Met, the US Open trophy came around we had this idea that we could have the US Open trophy displayed, or at least have a photograph taken with the ancient amphora from Greece in the Greek department. And so you see those things behind us in that photograph. Those are the amphora that Olympic athletes got in the ancient Olympics, filled with olive oil. So we had the trophy and the amphora next to each other. Everyone knows about the laurel wreaths that Olympic athletes got in ancient days, but they also got an amphora full of olive oil, and that's my wife Rupa and our twins, who have now left for college. And so we are true empty nesters, and Rupa is a former world-class athlete in rifle shooting, captain of the Oxford team and Rhodes Scholar, all of that stuff. And she has told me about how much she admires Billie Jean King and the pioneering work that she's done. So this has given me a chance to give her a shout out as well. So let me bring Neil back on before we bring Johnette back on, and just say what a great show this was, how much we all learned, and I can't wait to hear from her one last time before we say goodbye, Neil.
Absolutely. And Sri, I just thought we'd clarify something for our audience. Your twins went off to college this year. This picture was taken about 10 years ago, maybe. I just didn't want anyone to think that they had just left for college after
That's great.
taken. Just wanted to make sure in case people didn't
Thank you.
know.
As I said it, I did think about that. But yes, this was about 2014 or so it's been a while. Yeah.
Absolutely. But no, this was an absolutely incredible show. Another in a series of interviews we've done with sports writers. Claire Smith last year, it was an incredible honor for me to interview her as a baseball fan. But then we also had Bill Roden earlier this year, George Vesey and John Branch, and then, of course, Neil Amdor as well. So thank you very much. All of that is due. We have a great production team, and I want to make sure that we give a shout out to our production team, Paula Kiger, Steve Taylor, Julia Weeks, and Carla Baranakis. You've seen Paula putting in links to articles and providing context in Facebook and LinkedIn. Carla was doing the same in Johnette's Facebook page. Thank you to everyone who watched over there. And Carla is the one that also put us in touch with Johnette and with most of those other guests that I just mentioned. So thank you. And as we're talking about Carla, I wanted to make sure that we mention the Local Connection newsletter. The Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University puts out the Local Connection newsletter each week. It offers story ideas and pro tips for journalists. Best of all, it's free. You can subscribe at bit.ly/local news tips, bit.ly/local news tips. And that's where, when Johnette comes back and she talks about the book again and offers a pro tip, that's where that pro tip will go into that newsletter. This show is produced under the auspices of Digimentors, the social and digital consulting firm that Sri started several years ago. And during the pandemic, we switched into hybrid and virtual events. So if you're interested in having us produce a show like this for you, get in touch, either Sri at digimentors.group or Neil at digimentors.group. We'd love to talk to you, particularly as from everything we're hearing and we're seeing. Although there was the big push to virtual, and there started to be a few hybrid events with Delta variant, it's going back to online. And we think that hybrid events are going to stay, just the ease of accessing the content and the reach that you get. So let us know. Feel free to get in touch. We'd love to work with you. And again, a shout out to our sponsor, Muckrack. Thank you for all of the great support that you've offered to the show. So with that, we will bring back Johnette for a final word. Johnette, thank you again for a great show. Thank you for all your support and letting us go live on your Facebook and Twitter accounts as well. Some of your friends were able to watch that way, and it was very active. A lot of comments.
Yeah, it was great.
Show.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Carla for reaching out to me, and thank all of you for the opportunity to talk. You guys do an incredible job and an important service. So congratulations on the show coming up on 6 years.
Absolutely. And I forgot to mention that we have, in addition to you this week, Jean Pinder, who was watching earlier, is going to be our guest. She was at the New York Times for 23 years. And then Jared Adams is going to be our guest on October 3rd. So we hope that folks will stay and come back to watch those shows, and maybe you'll come back as well, Johnette. Maybe we've got you interested in what we're doing here.
I'm going to have to show up and do a little questions and answers, just like Mom.
I just want to point out that our next two guests are talking about very important topics. Jean has created Real Health Costs, a journalism company bringing
clear health costs
to clear health costs, about bringing transparency to healthcare costs. And then Jared Adams has a book out called Redeeming Justice: From Defendant to Defender, My Fight for Equity on Both Sides of a Broken System. So he's now a top criminal defense lawyer after having been on the other side himself. So, yeah. So Johnette, let's come to you. So two things, a pro tip, please, and then tell us why we should all be reading All In.
Right. Pro tip. I'm not in a daily journalism environment anymore, but I have a lot of friends who remain there, and it's troubling to me to hear how much they report back that story choices are governed by traffic, and future story choices are governed by the performance of stories that have run in the past. And it's my hope, and I would urge people to think that both are possible, that you can choose topics that are both legitimately newsworthy and not informed by chasing traffic, and still build a following. I think that if you do that, you'll be a place that people come to for the kind of journalism that matters. And that's my wish as much as my tip. I believe both are possible, I think, is what I would say. And I know how disheartening it is to see people in the business be told that, nah, that won't drive traffic. That bugs me. As far as the book, All In, the reason I wanted to do the book was I feel like it's an important book at this moment. Even though Billie Jean's been on the scene for a long time, the back half of her life has been the same as the front half. She's been devoted to activism and on many fronts, diversity and inclusion. And I think the reason to read it now, and the reason she's relevant now, is that she was on the front line of all these fights originally, and it's all being re-argued, relitigated. And I think she has some fascinating things to say about the mindset that you need. One of the things she says is that if you're in the business of the change game, you have to be prepared for the long haul. And she certainly lived that. And I think she gives other insights that can maybe help people make sense of the world now. And on top of that, she's fun, and she's had an extraordinary life, and she's got some great anecdotes, and she's known everybody from Mandela to Elton John to, met Queen Elizabeth to Bobby Kennedy to the Beatles to, it's an unbelievable sweep to her life. And somebody told me it was like watching Forrest Gump.
Paula has a great comment there, one of our great producers. I'll share that I'm reading the book in Audible. BJK narrates, Billie Jean King narrates. It's so good. It's like a history lesson in addition to sports stories, and you've got 3 so's from Paula, so that means it's really good.
Oh, thank you.
And Jess Esch was just quoting you and sharing the back half of Billie Jean King's life has been the same as the front half, and I thought that was great as well. One thing we didn't mention, and I just want to put on the screen really quickly, Johnette, I know that we're going long, so thank you for your patience and perseverance with us. You also wrote a book called The Rivals about Chris Evert and Martina Navratilova, and lo and behold, Billie Jean King had a great blurb for that book, which came out, I believe, 2007, so 14 years later. You're working with Billie Jean King on her autobiography. So I thought that was great.
No, actually the reason I met Billie in '87 the first time at the New York Hyatt, Grand Hyatt. She was in the dining room, and I did that horrible fan thing where you walk up and interrupt their meal. But I told her, I said, thank you. I want to thank you for making it possible for me to be a sports writer. That was the first time we met, and here we are, 40 years later. 30.
That's incredible.
Who's counting?
Who's counting? Just a couple of years here and there. Jean Pinder is watching. She's going to be next week's guest. She's looking forward to it. So thank you, Jean. And she actually, Sri, she mentioned earlier as well. See if I can find that comment. When she reflected on your a call to reach out to mentors, and she thought that was great. She's going to do that right away. Doug said that it's hard to say thank you sometimes. Yeah, we have some great. Chitachi did a shout out to the production team, which we think are great. And she also said that hybrid is here to stay, which I think is definitely the case. So with that, we will bring our show to a close. Our guest, of course, was Johnette Howard. After we finish today's show, you'll be able to find it on the same links on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and YouTube, also on our website. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks to you guys.